8's not bad. Okay, number 11. We've got a sinusoidal curve has a maximum of 75 and a minimum of 35. The value of the vertical shift for this function relative to the normal sine curve is. All right, let's talk about that thing. The normal sine curve, like the mother function of the sine curve. Draw it quick. Should look like this. If you don't know it, you can always just graph y equals sine x, and then it would tell you it, right? It starts right at the middle. It goes up and then down. That maximum that it hits is 1. The minimum that it hits is negative 1. And it does that exact same pattern the other way too. Perfect. We're all good with that. We all agree? Okay, this question said a sinusoidal curve has a maximum of 75, a minimum of 35. The value of the vertical shift. The vertical shift would be the d value. All right, vertical shift means a vertical translation. The vertical translation is the d value at the end of a sinusoidal function. We think about a sinusoidal function like this. Right, vertical shift, this value. Vertical shift. Perfect, so you just have to find the d value. To find the d value, that's also called the midline. I like to use a formula. The formula is max plus min divided by 2. I know that's the formula because midline's also average. And the way you calculate the average of a sine graph is like the highest point plus the lowest point divided by 2. And that'll cut it right in half for you. So for us, it means our d value is 75 plus 35 divided by 2. That means your d value is 55. A.
What is it? Maximum minus minimum?
Maximum minus minimum is your a value. That's a good question. You're welcome. Okay, another way you could do that without the formula is you could take your mother function and you could think of where the midline on your mother function is. So your midline on your mother function is right here. It's at 0. And then you could figure out where the new one was by a vertical shift, right? Like where did it go up to? At some point, you're then going to have to figure out the midline is halfway between 75 and 35. Whether you use a formula, counting, a sketch, whatever, at some point you're going to have to figure out the midline in between those 2 points. The vertical shift is where this midline got moved to. If you think of it in translation line. What I can't do, though, is I can't figure out where the maximum was moved to. That doesn't work. The reason that doesn't work is because the maximum gets stretched and then it gets shifted, right? So you can't be like, oh yeah, the maximum went from 1 to 75. That means the vertical shift was 74. That's not necessarily true, right? You're doing midlines to figure out vertical shifts, not maximums and minimums. All right, word problem. The height of a piston in engine can be determined by the function h equals negative 15 sine pi t over 0.025 plus 20, where height h is in centimeters and time t is in seconds. Determine the period of this function. Determine period. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for. A lots of different strategies here. You could graph this in your calculator. You could try to look at that graph and figure out how long it takes to cycle. That's a legitimate strategy. What I would do, though, is I would remember my formula. My formula is period equals 2 pi divided by my b value. Remember, that's not provided, right? So it's just like a trig formula that you need to know. Your b value is pi divided by 0.025. That means if I wanted to calculate my period, it equals 2 pi divided by pi divided by 0.025. I don't know what that equals. The 0.2? Actually, I don't know. The pi's will cancel out. It's going to be 2 times 0.025, which I don't know what that is. So you want to try throwing in your calculator?
0.05.
0.05? Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
0.05.
0.5. I need another 0. That makes sense. .25 going 4 times. Why can't my brain compute that? Yeah, anyways, okay, 0.05.
That's maybe
Cool.
that's too early.
It's too early. It's Blue Monday. You're not optimal, you know? I notice there's like no final exams on Blue Monday, except Johanneson's got one right now.
But they put a diploma on Friday the 13th.
Right? Would you rather write a diploma on Friday the 13th or Blue Monday? Friday the 13th. I'd rather Friday the 13th. Alright, number 13. A Ferris wheel has a radius of 20 meters. It rotates once every 40 seconds. Passengers get on a point 1 meter above the ground. We have to figure out an equation for this. So let's build an equation that'll tell us our amplitude, our period, and our median height. It'll tell us all those things. But let's just practice making an equation here. So your equation is going to look like this. Yep.
I realize starting to say this is a dumb question, but wouldn't it be a coast graph because it starts at the bottom?
To each their own. It could be a coast graph, could be a sine graph. So coast and sine graphs make like the exact same pattern, right? The only difference will be your C value. You'll notice that this question does not ask you for your C value. If it did ask you for your C value, it probably would tell you whether you're making a sine or a coast graph. So technically you could make this as a coast graph as well. I'm going to make sine. I don't know, I like sine graphs more. I don't know why. Okay, what this looks like to us. We have a Ferris wheel with a radius of 20. It rotates once every 40 seconds. Passengers get on a point 1 meter above the ground. Perfect. Let's start with our A value. A value is your amplitude. That is the distance from the middle to max or min. Right, like that's what the A value is telling you. It's telling you the distance from the middle to the top or the bottom. In this case, you're talking about the middle of the Ferris wheel to the top of the Ferris wheel, or the middle of the Ferris wheel to the bottom of the Ferris wheel. They told you that Ferris wheel had a radius of 20. Radius would be the distance from the middle of your Ferris wheel to the top of your Ferris wheel, right? Yeah, like it's the middle to the outer edge, but you can imagine middle to top. So your A value is 20. Perfect. Second one we're going to find is our B value. To find your B value, you would need to use the formula B equals 2 pi over period. The question actually asks you for the period. So I guess we'll find the period. Period is how long